Three, two, one.
Welcome to the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast. Transfer Nation aims to create a network and community of educators who work with and advocate for transfer and post-traditional college students. Our mission is to build community, transform culture, and empower success for transfer educators and students by sharing resources and celebrating all things transfer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast. If you haven't been following us on Facebook or you're new to this community, welcome. We're so excited you're here and that you're listening or watching. My name is Chrissy. I'm a social media manager with Transfer Nation and one of the hosts of the Transfer Nation podcast. And today we're joined by an amazing guest as part of our Student Stories initiative. This is Ariana Davarpanah, and she is not only a transfer junior student at Stanford, but she's also the founder of Transfer Tea, which is an amazing network and community and digital media that provides a mixture of interviews and different tips and other bits of information for students who are interested in transferring, for highlighting transfer students who are currently attending school, and things of that nature, really bringing awareness to the transfer process. And so with that being said, Ariana, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, hi, like Chrissy said, my name is Ariana. I'm a junior at Stanford. I'm currently studying political science, and who knows if I'll minor. But yeah, and again, just echoing what she said, I'm the founder of Transfer Tea, which is exactly as she described, just a little podcast, a little area on the internet that is meant to hopefully help transfer students' perspective and current transfer students. And yeah.
I love that, and I think a little later on we'll dive into more about what Transfer Tea is all about and things of that nature. But before we get into that, I think what we really want to hear is about your transfer story. So you started at the community college level, and like we said, you're now at Stanford. And so could you tell us a little bit about your transfer journey and what brought you to attend community college and then choose to transfer?
Yeah, so I always kind of start this. I think it begins my junior year of high school. I was in a pretty competitive school, although it was a public school. It was normal to take like 4 or 5 APs, and it was very academically rigorous. And I was totally a part of that, completely in with everyone else. And I think it was towards the end of my first semester of junior year that I sort of realized I didn't understand why I was doing anything that I was doing, which is a profoundly mature moment for someone who is not incredibly mature, which I really don't. I'm so thankful I had that moment, but I don't know where it came from. I realized I didn't know why I was supposed to take the SAT or why I was in AP physics when I didn't even like physics. And all I knew, kind of being a student who, while my parents have gone to university, they didn't go to school in the States. So I was kind of this weird, not first gen, but a little first gen, not sure what I was supposed to do. And just hearing all these outside voices telling me I should do like internships or be a part of clubs and take the SAT, everything was just got to the point that was too much. And I didn't like any of it. It felt very much like being in a rat race, but being that like confused rat that was running in circles. And that was kind of a moment where I realized I could go to community college. My mom had taken classes to kind of expand her degree, things like that. And I liked community college. I remember I'd gone with her when I was little, and I would sit in class. And the ones in my area are just so beautiful. I thought I might as well. And you could concurrently enroll. So you could take a course or two alongside your full high school load, which I did. And my very first experience was in a biology course with Anne Gearhart. And she was just so kind and warm and passionate about biology and what she was teaching, that I automatically felt like I belonged there and I should be at the College of San Mateo, which is where I ultimately enrolled. And it really was just that decision and the great experience I had as a concurrently enrolled student that motivated me to go to community college. That was not that's not to say that there were no difficulties in doing so, or that I was confident all the way or didn't feel bad when all my friends applied to 4 years and got into 4 years, and things like that. But for some reason, I was really, really dedicated to the idea, and I not once thought about applying to 4 years or going anywhere else. It was just from junior year on, it was that I was going to go to the College of San Mateo, and that was my choice and where I wanted to go.
I love that. And you've touched on a lot of amazing points that I don't think a lot of people who are trying to enter the educational system are aware of. I think something that's not talked about a lot in the transfer community from my experience is that you can attend community college classes while you're at the high school level. And that's amazing that you did that. That's amazing that you went with your mom while she was taking classes.
Didn't have a choice.
That's still really cool though. But
yeah, it is a really great opportunity, and I think until you graduate high school, at least in California, it's free of charge. It was completely free to take those classes. So
wow. Oh my goodness. So you took the classes at the community college level free.
which
That's
is
amazing.
I always say I wish I could go back and take more concurrent enrolled classes than my APs, especially because none of my APs, while they would have transferred to a public school in California, not a single one transferred to Stanford. So yeah, I really wish I had
Oh my
taken
gosh.
more. But if anyone else is listening and in that position, I do think that that is a much better move. But yeah, if I could.
Yeah. And you said that there was a biology instructor who was teaching one of your classes, and you felt like you really connected with them, and they were really warm and inviting. How do you feel like having an educator like that at the community college level motivated you or helped you in the transfer process?
I think that's actually a really great question, because many of the professors and staff members that I met during my time at community college embodied sort of the same warmth and kindness as that biology professor. And I think that that really just changed the entire course of my life and changed the person that I was. From the beginning, I had like a counselor who was so sweet and so kind. She's retired now, but she was with me like throughout the entire journey. She was the one who helped me change my major and realize that it was okay to change my major. Um, all of those experiences really built me, because I think it is very easy to get lost at community college, especially that first year, when many of your friends have kind of gone away. People are in all sorts of different situations, whether you're traditional or not. I think that first year is a tough transition. And just having professors there that made it nice to go to school, even though I at the time didn't have friends yet, was just like what it took for me to continue going and not look for a different option or give up or
Yes.
anything like that. So I think I wrote like a piece for my college, and I can't name all of the different educators who influenced me and are the reason that I'm where I am. But it's so important to acknowledge that they really are, and connecting with them, which is why I always say to go to office hours. I know everyone like groans, but it can change everything. Like they're, especially at community college, because they're really willing to meet with you and sit down with you and just talk to you like a person.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is really inspiring, and I think important for students who are considering the transfer process, who are prospective and are listening to this, to consider, because you touched on that it can be really overwhelming that first year at the community college. Something else you said earlier was that it almost felt discouraging to see all of your friends go to four-year universities and things like that. And I feel like transfer I feel like that is out there to show and prove to those students you don't need to enter with those types of negative expectations or feelings. You can enter knowing you're going to meet amazing educators like you did, who will welcome you in with open arms and will empower you as go, whether you're going to complete a certification or you're actually going to transfer. You're going to be empowered by the educators that are at the community college level. I love that. I love that. Again, you're bringing that awareness with Transfer T. Can you tell us a little bit about Transfer T and kind of how that was started and what your hopes are, what you want to accomplish through Transfer T and what you've already accomplished, of course?
So Transfer T originally started because of a LinkedIn post. I actually posted on LinkedIn that I'd gotten into Stanford and I wanted to post not to sort of show off my acceptance, but to really kind of use that name in order to garner attention to the point where I could say, now that you have read this, if you need any help as a transfer student, you can reach out to me. That was the intention. And it worked. A lot of people saw it. A lot of students messaged me, and I started doing, yeah, it was weird. I started doing one-on-one kind of Zoom calls and answering questions. And one of the biggest things I'd ever gotten, or like reactions I got, was that people were saying, I've just never had the chance to speak to someone who's transferred. I've never had the chance to talk to someone who's gone through the process. And I realized I hadn't really either. I'd made a few friends who had transferred, and if I could, I would ask them like a quick question here or there, but you don't really want to bother someone. Most of the time, the thing about transferring is that you leave, you move on. So the person's not even physically there, and a mixture of COVID and Zoom becoming normal and everything just created that opportunity. And I realized that students just needed to hear success stories and needed to hear these stories, because those of us who have transferred also have learned so much in the process, and what we've learned is worth so much. I felt like it was worth sharing. And initially the goal really was, if I could help one student, excuse me.
Oh no, what a cutie!
Without fail, every time.
Oh, what a cutie. It's a dog, right? I only saw the tail.
Yeah, very chubby, needy dog. But yeah, initially the goal was really just to be able to help at least one student who, especially a student, I kept thinking of myself at 18, knowing that I would have probably seen a LinkedIn post like that, maybe hit the like button, would have been afraid to even do that, and move on. I would have been way too terrified to ask for help. And I realized that a podcast was such a great way to kind of get that help without having to ask. And that was really the goal, to see if I could hopefully help one person who maybe wouldn't go after that help in any other way. And it's been amazing to have students message me and to say that they actually listen and they've learned a lot, or that they've been inspired by someone who's been on the podcast, or just the podcast in general. But honestly, as opposed to what my goals are with it now, there's definitely been people who have kind of pushed ideas of like monetization or consulting or things like that. But honestly, my goal from the beginning was just to help students, and that's just what it still is. If it continues to be a resource that can inspire and help others, then it's doing what it's meant to do. And I'll continue it for as long as I can. It's very difficult to balance these things, but hopefully it can continue. And I've met so many amazing transfer students along the way, which has been incredible. And everyone is so different. So I think it's also helped me grow, and I really enjoy doing it. So that's
wow. That is so inspirational because while you're telling me all this, I'm thinking about the fact so this is your first year at Stanford, right?
Yeah.
So the story and narrative you're telling through Transfer T and just in your own story, you're also doing this. You're a transfer student starting in the middle of the pandemic. There are no transfers who have come before your class who've had to experience anything like this, and so you're bringing that unique perspective to the story as well. And
It's quarantine quarter. I'm hoping it will. Well, it's going to be
yeah,
quarantine year, won't it?
yeah, but we can be hopeful.
Um,
um, but wow, and you're truly being this ray of knowledge and information and empowerment to students. Like you said, like if some of us, if we were just scrolling through LinkedIn, we might give it a like or just feel, but Transfer T is directly reaching out to those students and saying, look at these stories and take the inspiration and see that it doesn't have to be a scary process. It doesn't have to be a negative process. You're destigmatizing, you're doing all of those things through this amazing network and, you know, collection of media. And just in general, it's amazing you're doing all this again as a first year at Stanford. That is amazing. And I truly think the work you're doing as a result will bring about other students who will do this similar or same amazing things that you're doing, which is bringing awareness to this avenue of transfer, ultimately ensuring more access to education, that more students can go to school, that more students can get their degree. And that is just really amazing.
Thank you. That's so nice. I'm going to start blushing.
No, but it's true. And it's also so cool that it just started through LinkedIn. I didn't realize that it started from you writing a post and then in turn you created Transfer T from that, because I saw on the website you have single-handedly made a team. I saw you have a team who's also behind Transfer T. So that means there's other students who are really passionate about this, putting together this amazing thing.
I mean, I have just quickly to shout them out, but Jeffrey Ward edits the podcast every week, and I don't think I could do this without him. He also goes to the College of San Mateo. He's going to transfer, and my friend Lauren is the same. She's just helped so much. She's kind of like a partner, if you will, and all these other students who have been involved. My friend Ashlyn isn't even a transfer, but she helps us with the TikTok.
I love that.
It's just so cool to be able to kind of have everything come from students. And everyone is just so dedicated to the cause, if you will. And it's a really great experience and really like refreshing to see that we don't have to have other people help us. Like we can do this and we're capable of doing it. But truly couldn't do it without them. They're amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned you have someone, especially for TikTok, someone who's not even a transfer student. That's amazing that they're advocating for this community and for this process. But I love that you are taking the time, because TikTok is something that's particularly modern, wouldn't you say? Like really with the times. Oh my God, I just aged myself so much.
There is a reason that Ashlyn does the TikTok, and it is because I cannot be bothered to be involved with the TikTok, but we're putting her TikTok addiction to good use, as she would
There
say.
you go. And that's what I'm saying is it appeals to this next generation of students who might transfer or consider it, and that's so cool that you're taking the steps to make it personable to the avenues that they might be interested in, the forms of social media that they might be interested in, and avenues especially, it seems like that creators and advocates have to find in this time of everything being online and things like that. So that's really innovative. That's great. But so as we're kind of talking about like the transfer experience, and just amazing that you transferred to Stanford and have built this amazing transfer tea. Um, what do you feel like is one tip or insight in all of these experiences or from all these experiences that you feel like you would want to give to someone who's interested in transferring or is considering the transfer process? What's one tip that you feel like you wish you knew as a student?
I think the biggest tip I have comes from having transferred to Stanford. It's kind of weird. I don't actually say that sentence that often, because I get asked a lot about how to transfer to Stanford, or can I look over someone's plan to transfer to Stanford? And I think what I unconsciously did, and not because I am any different from anyone, but truly because I didn't believe that I ever could go to a school like Stanford. Um, but really, I think it is just so important to not focus on where you want to transfer. I think that is the most important part of the transfer process, is to not focus on that, because when you do that, you start putting yourself into the future, and you're constantly in this world of what if and what should I do to please people I don't even know. And it starts to make you seem inauthentic, and do things maybe that aren't what you want to be doing. And unfortunately, it's kind of this weird area where that shows in your application. But at the end of the day, it also affects who you are as a person. So I think really just focusing on where you are presently, and doing what you believe you need to be doing for yourself, for the goals you have, and to feed your values, is so much more important and will pay off in the long run than to think about or focus on where you want to transfer, where you want to be. Like, you can have those goals in the back of your mind, but I've noticed for many people that they seem to be at the forefront. Um, and that's just going to hurt, especially if you don't end up getting into a school, because the application process and the admission process is just so random and unpredictable that you don't want to be sitting there come May or June wishing you'd done something else. You want to be proud that you did what you did because you got to teach people how to speak English, or helped someone overcome poverty, or something really incredible. And you don't need some school or admissions officer patting you on the back and saying good job. Like, you know that you have done something valuable. So that was very lengthy, but really I think it is just do what you're passionate about and focus on being in the present as opposed to stuck in the future.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that is so important for transfer students to hear, because it seems like there's a misconception about when you're starting at community college that you don't need to get involved. You just need to complete the classes. You just need to do the credits. And the reality is your experience will be so much more enriching if you do what you're saying. Live in the moment. Get involved. Do the things at the community college level. Get involved in the organizations. Get involved with the clubs, the departments, the honor societies, anything. Because yeah, if you constantly are only looking forward to where you're transferring or tailoring yourself to be a certain type of student or something, it ultimately will not be as beneficial as living in the moment, emotionally or in the long run for your application and things like that. That's
yeah, completely agree.
so important. With that being said, you kind of gave a tip about what you wish students knew as they're considering the transfer process. What do you feel like is something you wish educators knew about the transfer process? So educators meaning faculty or administration, or someone who's doing the decision making behind transfer credits, or staff, just any educators who are involved in the transfer process. That could also include professors. What's something you wish they knew about the transfer experience?
I wish that, I think it is already being done, but I wish there was more of a consideration for the position that transfer students are in and where they're coming from. I think that it is so different to be a transfer student than it is to be a Frosh applicant and or freshman. I don't know if Frosh is used. um, because something I've really noticed, even having transferred, is that kind of my transfer cohort and the ones before us, we th- there's a tendency to kind of stick to transfers because you feel like you don't fit in even after you've transferred. Um, and I think that really does come from kind of there not maybe being enough of an understanding that it is a different situation. You do enter a school not having been there the first 2 years, and it changes you. Like a lot of us, even myself, like there are moments where I think like, do I deserve to be here? Or I didn't know that when someone mentioned something and all of a sudden it's like kind of you feel like an outsider. And I think it is important to always just be mindful of where people come from. Um, I think I have a bit of a privilege being more of a traditional student. I think being considerate towards non-traditional students as well is incredibly important. And just realizing that while we're all taking the same credits and going to the same classes, we're not the same people, and that's good. But it also, like, there can't be a blanket policy for everything, I feel like. So I really appreciate the schools that do have kind of special standards for when it comes to admission for veterans or non-traditional students or international students or things like that. But really just attention to the fact that there is a difference, and that's okay. Um, I think I've noticed schools are working on it. I don't know about specific educators and things like that, but it is just worth considering. There are definitely differences all along the journey, even once you have transferred.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. When an educator can consider the unique or individual background or circumstances of a student, it can just really revolutionize the education and how the student receives that education. It's so important, and then something, like you said, I think we're making progress 100%, but there's still work to be done. So I'm really glad you brought that up, definitely. Um, yeah, and with that being said, we've talked about a tip for students, we've talked about what you wish educators knew. So lastly, as we kind of wrap up here, what's something you wish that society or maybe your family or friends knew about the transfer process, or really maybe not even just knew but understood about the transfer process that society might not currently understand?
I think all of it, and from the people I've talked to, and the nature of transfer tea and just everything in between, is that the transfer process is really misunderstood by people who haven't gone through it. There is sometimes like the idea that it's easier to get into a school as a transfer because rates are higher at certain schools, or that I don't know, you have special circumstances. Like there's so much within this stigma. And I think the most important thing to realize is that the transfer process, no matter what it is at the end of the day, can be kind of lonely. And whatever sort of your beliefs are towards community college or transferring out of a 4 year or acceptance rates or anything like that, honestly, I think if one is able to sort of put that aside and just support someone who's working towards transferring, I think that that is so important. And for myself personally, I wouldn't have applied um, honestly to Stanford if I didn't have the support of certain family members who encouraged me and wove their way in to kind of like the walls that I had built around transferring, because it felt easier to isolate. And I noticed that with a lot of us, is that it just kind of is something you try to do on your own. You don't want to talk about what you're doing or things like that. And if being there for someone, supporting them, educators who offered to write rec letters, educators who offered to edit my UC essays, were kind of little lights that helped me see that I wasn't alone in this confusing, difficult process. But I also know students who didn't have that and ended up not even applying to schools just because they felt like they couldn't do it, or they didn't know how. And like, while they aren't alone, they feel alone. And being able to kind of intervene and be like, hey, like, I could help you, or how is it going, without it being coming from a place of judgment or stigma, is, I think, important. That's very lengthy and vague, but it's hard to describe, honestly.
No, it wasn't vague. It's so important. I think a lot of times you touched on a really important point of isolation, because you and I definitely know there are amazing transfer communities out there who are ready to welcome and accept students. But when you're first starting the process, kind of like what you said earlier about watching your friends go the traditional route while you're going, okay, I'm going to start at a different route. It can feel lonely at first. And just making society aware that even if you're not a transfer student, your support, whether you're an educator, whether you're a family member, like you said, whether you're a friend who's helping make the TikToks for the transfer social media account, the support, it really helps in that process, and really helps with the beginning, maybe feeling of isolation, and hopefully will cause transfer students to see that transferring doesn't have to be a lonely or isolating thing. There are so many other transfer students who are going through this same process. I mean, like you said, everyone has their own, and it has their own unique circumstances and identities and things of that nature, but it's something that a lot of other students are experiencing as well. But Ariana, you have touched on so many amazing things today, and I think that just shows why you're an amazing transfer student. And not only that, but you're just so qualified to start and run something amazing as Transfer T. Can you tell us where we can find you on social media at Transfer T? Like, I know it's a podcast. I think you're all on Instagram, and so anywhere we can find you, just let us know.
It's a podcast. It's on basically every podcast platform there is: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it. You can also find us on our website if you just search transfert.com. And then literally every social media. We're the most active on Instagram, but also Twitter and anything. And if anyone has questions, or honestly anything at all, you can contact us. There's a contact form on our site. It's linked in all of our social media. But if you search Transfer T, I think you have to put the words together for Google to understand it. But
okay, no space. Got it.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted there to be a space, but Google said no. But it's everywhere. So, and please feel free to reach out. I know I wouldn't have, but I'm asking you too, so please do.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Ariana, thank you so much for being on our podcast and letting us hear about not just your journey, but about this amazing thing you've started in Transfer T. But with that being said, we hope that you continue to listen to the Transfer Nation podcast and videocast. We hope you listen to Ariana's Transfer T podcast. But until next time, we'll see you and in Transfer Pride.
Thank you so much for listening. To continue the transfer conversation, be sure to join the Transfer Nation Facebook group at tinyurl.com/wearetransfernation. You can also follow us on Instagram at wearetransfernation and on Twitter at transferpride. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at tinyurl.com/tnationtube. If you have ideas for future episodes of the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast, please email us at wearetransfernation@gmail.com. We can't wait to continue celebrating all things transfer with you. And as always, in Transfer Pride.